Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:03. This is the Carson City Planning and Zoning Commission's regularly scheduled meeting. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Borders.
Here.
Vice Chair Doors.
Here.
Commissioner Eswine.
Here.
Commissioner Preston. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Tingle. Commissioner Wiggins.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. Can we have our Pledge of Allegiance? And Commissioner Tingle, will you lead us?
Absolutely.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Plummer, will you give us the rules of the day?
Yeah, good evening. For the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. So as you can see, we're set up a little differently. Today, we're operating under the governor's directive that came out just 2 days ago on Tuesday, limiting gatherings of 10 persons or more in a group. So we're, after discussing it with the city manager and the district attorney's office today, we're making some accommodations to continue this meeting today because this meeting the agenda was already out within 3 days, for one thing. This was already scheduled when it came out. And also we have items on the agenda for which there are time limits under NRS in which you have to take action. So we could delay this, but we would only delay it by 2 or 3 weeks, after which time, not sure there'd be another solution to operating anyway. It's a relatively small agenda. We have some people here for these items, but we're going to make accommodations today. So for the logistics of this meeting, we're the test case, so to speak, for conducting the meeting under these circumstances. So you have to pardon any logistical hiccups along the way. It might take a little extra time to get through things. But what we're doing is we're limiting the number of people in this room. We have the Deputy District Attorney and Engineer are watching through the internet, so they're watching the meeting, following along. If they need to weigh in on anything, they'll give the planner's phone a call, and we'll have them speak that way through a speaker and ask questions. So they should be watching and following along, and they can provide their guidance as necessary through the meeting. We're going to have one applicant, one representative from any given application in the room at one time. That'll be our 9th person in this room. And we'll also have one planner. We'll be swapping out, so whoever's item it is to give you the presentation will be in here. So between items, we'll take a little bit of logistics, moving people around between items for just a minute or two. We have public comments set up remotely, actually just outside of this room. They're watching on TV out there. We're also taking some other group separation measures in place outside this room to try to follow the governor's directive. As terms of future, just for the Planning Commission's information and anybody else for future board meetings or any other meetings, we're not sure. They're working on other technological methods to do this and have it right, but so is everybody else in the country right now. So it's a little hard to get help implementing these new things. And just for the general public at this point, I'll say that for information on the COVID-19 and local resources and the carson.org webpage, there's banners right on the front page there to click to for more information. So that's a little bit about running the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to and within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there anyone out there in our distant audience that has a comment to make under the general public comments?
Yeah, and I will note, Mr. Chair, that there are members of the public here for the second item for sure, for second and third items, and you will be taking public comment during those items.
All right, thank you. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda, item C, is approval of minutes for the February 26, 2020 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I think in your packet, you don't have the February 26 minutes.
That's right, correct.
You just have the
I just have
workshop
the,
minutes.
I'm sorry, just have the workshop minutes.
I would like to make one clarification to the minutes.
The March 4th minutes
The
now.
Planning Commission late material, the workshop,
Correct.
right. I would like it clarified or noted that while it's wonderful that Supervisor Bagwell thanked the commission for their time and explained her rationale of defining public benefit, I would like something stated about why that comment was needed, why there was discussion about that particular item. And there's nothing in these minutes that indicate why that came about. And I would really like there to be some clarification as to why we had any kind of concern or comment about public benefit.
Okay, Mr. Pummel?
Well, the minutes are to the clerks, but I would say that this meeting was in the.
This was a
here, wasn't
workshop.
it? But it was in this room, so it was recorded, and there's details. So you can ask the clerk about how they do the minutes, but they don't do verbatim minutes. And so if anybody wants the background, the meeting's always available to watch with the time on there, so you can go back.
And I understand that, but it's kind of like out of the blue that, Supervisor Bagwell was talking about the need for, no need for defining public benefit. I just think that in order to get a context of why that was even being discussed, I would appreciate that.
Okay. I'm not sure how we do that, other than the fact that, we were. Did you keep reaching accommodation over there?
Could we just add in a little blurb saying that Ms. Bagwell responded to commission discussion of the idea of public comment or public benefit?
I will make a motion. I move we approve the minutes of the February 26th workshop, including,
Nope, how about March 4th?
oh, sorry, I read the wrong one. Strike that. I move we approve the minutes of the workshop from March 4th, 2020. Apologies, including a change to, including an addition to read that Commissioner Bagwell questioned or added comments about the public benefit due to commission discussion on the subject.
All right, is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Mr.
Motion
Chair,
carries, yes?
before you move off this item, I do want to, on behalf of the DA's office, since he's not here, to make the statement on the February 26, 2020 minutes that aren't available at this time. NRS requires them to be reviewed within a certain time, but they're not available. So it also just says when they're not available, that under extenuating circumstances, they may not be available, and there were extenuating circumstances in this last few weeks, and so therefore the minutes are not available, and we'll provide them for you at the next meeting.
Okay. And we-
Mr. Chair, I have a clarification in the minutes about the hypothetical question by Supervisor Bagwell. Can I read that for the record?
Sure.
So basically Supervisor Bagwell wanted to see if the code would allow you commissioners, to forgo a finding for the public benefit, and she cited the hypothetical example of a project that may not fit a box, however, it brings hundreds of jobs to Carson City with relatively high average pay. And that was why she had mentioned the public benefit part. So that was the discussion in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, now, can we move on? Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relative to that item on the agenda at this time. Are there any modifications from anybody?
Staff has no
All right,
modifications.
thank you. Item E1, ZA 20200003 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding a recommendation of the Board of Supervisors for an ordinance declaring a moratorium for a period of up to 180 days on the ability to extend it by resolution for up to an additional 60 days on the acceptance and processing of planning and/or applications for construction or operation of hemp cultivation or hemp product manufacturing. Mr. Holman.
Again, for the record, Lee Plumwell, Community Development Director. I'll be going over this item briefly, just give you a little bit of background on this. So currently, under federal and Nevada law, the cultivation and product manufacturing from hemp is permitted in the state. And so this item came up recently as a result of a potential outside growing facility that was in the proposed last summer, and as a result of that, it came up that there are potentially some impacts similar to those with marijuana, specifically with odor, where we might not want that type of activity in certain areas near residential and other things. So in conjunction with our open space program and environmental manager with the open space program, they put together some information regarding this, did some research on it about hemp and how it relates. It's very close to marijuana. It has a similar odor, pretty much, I think, indistinguishable. It's the live plant that has the odor. It's the green plant with the moisture in it that has the odor. And in terms of growing, there's used pesticides, there's erosion issues, fertilizers, water use, wildlife and livestock being attracted to it. These are mostly issues except for odor that could be applicable to other crops that are permitted. But these are issues that have come up. Also, again, with proximity to residential areas, they might be a little bit of an attractive nuisance because it is indistinguishable to the general public from regular marijuana, so which has been a problem in some areas. And again, with the main thing, I think after doing some research over the last month or two since this direction to initiate the moratorium has come about, the biggest issue that has come up around the state and the country is odors related to proximity of this type of use. So currently, agriculture, the growing of hemp would be permitted by right with no permits required, just like in terms of the city zoning, just like any other agricultural crop in the agricultural zoning district, and also the conservation reserve districts that we have on private properties around in the hills of Carson City. Our agricultural districts are kind of mixed in nearby. We have the Lampa Ranch still with some remaining agricultural property, Buzzy's Ranch down by the river, and actually Eagle Valley Golf Course is on property zoned agriculture. So there are some areas really in close proximity to residential areas where this could occur without any other limitations. So the purpose of a moratorium would be to put a hold on any new operations for growing as recommended. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but while we develop possible zoning regulations to decide where it should be allowed and where it's allowed, under what parameters. So one of the possible ways to do this is to regulate it like marijuana, which we have in place. And for cultivation and production, we only allow it, product manufacturers, that term production there is what was used, but it's product manufacturings from the plant. It's only allowed in general industrial and general industrial airport areas. And there's also further geographic area limitations that I'll show you in the next slide. It all requires a special use permit. All related activities are conducted indoors. Primarily, I think that has to do with odor control, because there's other regulations and ways they can control the odors that are emitted. Can't be visible from the outside. They have limited sign area height. And there's other state regulations and regarding marijuana. And these are the areas currently where we have marijuana cultivation and product manufacturing, which is basically our industrial areas in the northeast part of the city. So after doing a little bit more research on it, like I said, over the last month or two, and in fact, myself and 3 commissioners went to one of our hemp handlers within the city and took a tour of the place that they make products from hemp. And I will note at this point, there's 3. I had plans to ask everybody else, and then nobody was allowed to get together, and businesses were closed, so I canceled any contacting the other commissioners, so apologize what happened. Hopefully, I was hoping to get everybody to go see the place, but then we had our distancing restrictions, so that kind of put a kibosh on that. But what we learned from that is that the product manufacturers get dried product, and the dried product doesn't smell. It doesn't have the odor to it. It doesn't have any more odor than dried hay or any other agricultural product. It doesn't emit it outside the building. So our staff's recommendation is that this moratorium be for the cultivation only and the drying of live plants. So anything involving a facility that has live plant, that's where the odor is going to be potentially a problem to adjacent properties. So the moratorium would then exclude the hemp handling, and we in Carson City, in fact, has businesses operating now in Carson City, as I mentioned, that work with this product without incident for adjacent properties. So we don't think that's going to be an issue. We would anticipate if you recommend this moratorium to be put in place, we'd probably be back in the next month or two with some draft regulations for you to make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. So at this time, we don't need a lot of discussion on what the regulations should be, just enough discussion to be comfortable to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding a potential moratorium. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Yes. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wiggins down there.
Yeah, would the new regulations that are being drafted, if accepted, would they be retroactive to the existing businesses?
So new regulations could be retroactive if they were written that way. They typically are not. They typically in zoning are not. We don't have any now. What would typically happen is any existing business would be grandfathered, even if a regulation were put in place that made them non-conforming at their current location. They would be grandfathered under other provisions of city code.
Lee, this seems to be when we're going to wrestle with odor again, it seems to be the new norm for things we consider as far as what industries and what things can happen in our community. And I don't know that we're still prepared to discuss odor intelligently anywhere, but it certainly needs, it's becoming the new buzzword. So, and I was one of the commissioners that did go out there. This facility, you wouldn't know what it was if you probably can't tell what it is by driving by it. Walk through it. And when even walking through it, you can't tell what it is.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think the commissioners that went felt, as Mr. Plummer felt, that restricting manufacturing of the dried product once it's delivered is really kind of onerous and probably didn't make any sense, but I think the rest of this did.
Thank you. And you brought up another point I meant to make about the odor from the live plants. That is something that we have experience with the marijuana cultivation that we have existing. And if it's not controlled properly, even within a building, you can smell the odors from the outside. So it is something we have experience with and can provide regulations appropriately.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Perry?
Yes, Rich Perry for the record. So this is a moratorium for cultivation of hemp only, right? Not the manufacturing of the downstream products, which is, I think I understood you say, has to occur in an industrial area, right? So this is only specific to the areas that are zoned agriculture and open space where this could actually occur.
That's correct. That's a recommendation. On the agenda is the possibility to include the moratorium for the other hemp handling product manufacturing, but because that was the original a couple weeks ago, the direction, but based on our new information, our recommendation is the cultivation only.
If I could just comment to the commission, in my travels around Nevada, I have seen a fair amount of hemp cultivation in agricultural areas. There's a lot of it north of Orovada, and it's basically replaced alfalfa in 80-acre parcels that are either flood irrigated or irrigated by centerline pivots. I don't recall any odors to it at the time, and I was never there when they harvested it. But obviously, it is legal and it is happening in the state in agricultural areas. And I'm assuming that that's the intent of some applicant wants to grow this in the city.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck?
Yes.
Anecdotally, I have family that lives in Iowa, and they grow hemp in Iowa to be used for all sorts of things, paper, rope, what have you. And I don't recall them ever saying that any of the folk around their fields have complained about the smell. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. And, you know, if you've lived in Nevada long enough and you smell alfalfa growing, which you can, I just don't see that there's a huge issue with this. But that's just, like I said, anecdotally from, you know, visiting in Iowa and them growing a lot of it there.
Okay. Mr. Perry?
Yes, Rich Perry for the record again. So if these are ag areas, and right now, in an ag area, an owner could grow any crop that they wanted to without an approval, what gives us the ability to do a moratorium on a specific crop versus like alfalfa or corn or something else?
Because this particular crop has specific state regulations that require a special, a permit or license from the state. Part of that requirement in NRS is that they prove that that the local jurisdiction allows that particular use where they're proposing it.
Commissioner Esselman?
I mean, I think that a lot of this discussion about odor and whatnot is a little premature because all we're being asked to do tonight is to refer a resolution to the Board of Supervisors so that the staff has the opportunity to look at the issue and determine whether or not there are regulations that need to be applied to the growing of hemp. We're not saying that, yes, we're going to, there will be really stringent regulation. We don't know that at this point. So I think that, a lot of this discussion is a little premature. We'll wait until we get the proposed ordinance, if there is even a proposed ordinance, come back in 180 days or whatever period of time that takes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Wiggins?
Yeah, Commissioner Wiggins, for the record, what is this going to do to the current applicants? And I don't see any out there who are going to testify, but if they did, they might be concerned about this.
To our knowledge, there's no current applicants in the state for hemp. We have
Oh, I see process of
Yeah.
getting licensed.
We have existing businesses, but we're not aware of any that are that are not operating but expect to. And have an application in with the state that aren't already operating.
Does this, Commissioner Doors, for the record, does this, just to verify, this does not affect any businesses currently manufacturing hemp or growing hemp, cultivating, as we
Correct.
put
This
it?
is only on new business licenses, so this does not affect any existing businesses that are operating in the hemp industry.
Okay. Any other comments? Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this issue? Seeing nobody racing to the microphone, I would assume that that's a no, and we can bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Dawes?
Commissioner Doors, for the record, I think it's good timing to address this. I think for the protection of the people trying to both cultivate and also for the city. I think given that, excuse me, given that we currently have no known applicants, I think it's good timing. There are some things I'd like to see addressed. Number one, one of the things up on the board up there on the slideshow was no distinguishable difference between hemp and marijuana without a laboratory test. That is inaccurate. So I think that I'm a little concerned about where some of this information is coming on this stuff. And there is some questions about smell and at what stage it may smell. I know, the information we got during our tour of the facility that we went on was that it does smell exactly like marijuana. So I'd like clarification from a source other than perhaps law enforcement, maybe like an authority on the matter if we can figure something like that out. But for the record, this commissioner does support a temporary moratorium so we can get rules in place without saying whether or not I support the cultivation itself.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Aswine,
I'd like to make a motion.
please do.
I move to recommend a moratorium for a period of up to 180 days with the ability to extend it by resolution of the Board of Supervisors for up to an additional 60 days on the acceptance and processing of planning and other applications for construction or operation of hemp cultivation only, including the drying of harvested hemp plant material.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Flavor, yes. All in flavor. They made gummy bears.
They did.
Agenda item number E2 for possible discussion and possible action regarding a request to amend a special use permit for a booster pump station to allow for the increase of height from 15 feet to 19 feet 2 inches for the approved facility on property zone single-family 21,000 planned unit development located approximately 390 feet east of Longview Way and 530 feet north of Waterford Place on the Long Ranch Planned Unit Development, APN 007-392-39. How, Heather, you appeared.
Thank you. Heather Ferris, Associate Planner for the record. On June 26, 2019, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit for a booster pump station on the subject parcel. As approved, the booster pump station will be located in the western portion of the subject parcel and housed in a prefabricated booster station building approximately 780 square feet in size. The facility will also include an interior emergency generator. The booster pump station is part of the east-west transmission main project and will help to provide adequate pressure to pump domestic water from the end of a 24-inch water transmission main located north of Long Ranch Estates to the Quill Treatment Plant water tank located on the west side of the city. The parcel which the booster station is located on is 9.92 acres in size and designated as an open space parcel on the Long Ranch Estates Phase 4 final map. The parcel was deeded to Carson City in 2004. Per the deed, the Long Ranch open space areas are to be limited to specific uses for open space, pathways, landscaping, parks, drainage, and other related public uses. The parcel is zoned single-family residential, 21,000 planned unit development, which allows these types of facilities subject to first obtaining a special use permit. So this is the zoomed-in version of the approximate location, the site plan, and some photos. You can see they've already started with the footings and the foundation. So the applicant has now completed the final design of the facility and has determined the overall height of the booster station must be increased from the originally approved 15 feet measured to the peak to 19 feet 2 inches, also measured to the peak. Since the increased height is not substantially the same as the height that was approved, an amendment to the special use permit is required. The increased height will accommodate the hospital-grade muffler on the emergency generator, and the muffler will reduce the noise levels to approximately 45 decibels from the previously anticipated 70 decibels. For comparison, a normal conversation is measured at about 60 decibels. A refrigerator runs at approximately 45 decibels, and a vacuum cleaner at approximately 70 decibels. Staff has received 2 pieces of correspondence from the Kaisers, which has been provided to you as late material. The primary concerns they note in the height is the height of the structure, which will impact their view, the proximity of the structure to their property line, and an insufficient notice for the June 26, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. As we've discussed with other projects, views are not protected. Staff has incorporated recommended conditions of approval, requiring the building to use materials and colors similar to homes in the area, and landscaping to help screen the building. The setback from the Kaiser's property line exceeds those required by the single-family 21,000 zoning district. And then with regard to the noticing for the June 26, 2019 Planning Commission meeting, per municipal code, the notices are required to, among other things, provide a project description and general location of the project. The notice is used to notify surrounding landowners of the project so that they can contact us for additional information and/or attend the public hearing. The notice is not required to provide all of the details of the project, as you would find in staff reports. Staff has conferred with the DA's office, and we believe noticing was done consistent with these requirements. There are 7 findings of fact the Planning Commission must make in the affirmative in order to approve an amendment to a special use permit. Staff was able to make all 7 findings in the affirmative and is recommending approval of the amendment. And I'm happy to go through any of those findings if you have questions. Dan Stuckey, the city engineer, is here representing the project, and I'm available for questions.
Questions for staff? Yes. Commissioner Tingle?
So after reviewing the late materials, I have a couple of questions, and no insinuations made about if there were any, sleight of hand, whatever. But, when the original pictures were taken about the location of this building, it showed that there were these conifers at the edge of the property that this building was going to, in theory, abut against. And that is not the case for the pictures that were provided by Mrs. Kaiser, as to the location of the building that's going to be put on the property. So her concern, and I feel it's a valid one, and I'm sorry that, they're not able to, be here, but when you're looking at the backside of their property, and that is now going to be, and I understand you can't buy, view, whatever they did when they bought the property, but when you're looking at the original 2019 pictures that show that this building is going to be covered by these conifers, and that is not the case now, I think the Kaisers have a fairly valid argument about maybe the facts of of where this building was going to be put were not necessarily clear in the noticing. So I just think they do have a valid concern about where this building is going to be erected and the height of the building that has gone from 15 feet to 19 feet, or 19.2 feet, that, I can understand how they're a little bit perturbed about how this has all come about and why this particular location is necessary. I mean, is there an alternative to where they're looking at putting this? Just asking.
Yeah, Dan Stuckey, city engineer for the record. So, this facility's been planned for multiple years, and obviously this is a 3-phase project. We've looked at multiple locations for the booster station. From a hydraulics or an operational efficiency standpoint, the booster station needs to be in this general vicinity. The reason why it's there is there's a floodplain that wraps into that. I mean, there's a channel, obviously, that runs through the open space area. The floodplain extends out quite a bit over the banks there. And so there's a couple options there, but really the only really good option for that booster station is right where we have it today and where it's proposed due to those reasons.
Is this muffler mounted vertically or horizontally?
It's vertical on top. So it's a big, it's essentially the size of like a small car essentially sitting on top of
So
that generator.
why don't we build a cupola on one end or stagger the roof? Because you're asking for 5 more feet of roof for a whole 60, 70-foot building, it looks like.
780 square feet.
Yeah. It just seems like we're making a great big building to accommodate a muffler, which is sitting on one end. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yes, so a portion of the roof, you're saying lower it, but the portion of the roof with the muffler.
Almost like a smokestack. You could build a
Yeah.
cupola and make it look architecturally nicer than a great big long tin roof.
Yeah, the muffler's pretty wide as well, but that is an option, to have, different height roof, obviously, like, I think what you're suggesting there. So, that is an option we looked at briefly, but have not explored further.
Well, if you kept the same height as the original permit, except for that one area, and you built whatever you built there to accommodate that muffler, it would certainly make that view line significantly smaller, which is obviously the concern of what we're hearing from some of these people. So I just wanted to know if that was considered or could be considered or is considered and is not feasible.
Like I said, we didn't explore it very deeply. We did look at it. It could be considered and explored. Obviously, we're at the final design stage, but it could be considered.
Commissioner Eswine?
Mr. Stuckey, where is the height going to be measured from the grade, or is it going to be from the top of the footing or the foundation? Because that sticks up about a foot from the ground.
Yeah, so go ahead.
In my discussions with Brian Elder with Public Works, he indicated that approximately a foot of that is actually underground, so it's 19 feet 2 inches is what they're estimating they need. We gave them a little bit of wiggle room for 19 feet 6 inches, just in case they're off by a little bit.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean by some of it is going to be underground. My question is are they measuring the 19 feet 6 inches from the grade or from the top of the foundation that's there?
It's from the grade to the peak of the roof is what we estimate about 19 foot 2.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, Commissioner Perry, I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Perry. A few, and I'm catching up on this because I'm new, and you did have a good explanation there of why it's there. I'm assuming that the water main runs up that corridor there that's city open space, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Heather, you said that this land was deeded to the city when this development occurred, and it's the open space there is city open space. Who
Right.
maintains the landscape?
It was deeded to the city sometime after. It was deeded in 2004,
Okay,
and it's owned and maintained by the city.
by the city, okay. And the generator is a diesel gen set, and it's only there as an emergency backup to electrical, right?
Yes.
And is the electrical already in there?
The conduit for the electrical is in, but the electrical is not in.
Did you have to get an air permit to place this generator set there?
An air permit?
Yeah, an air quality permit. It's a.
I'm not sure exactly.
I don't know if it fits that or not, but it is a fixed point source,
Yeah, I don't believe it fit that, but yeah, I'm not sure if we've
Okay.
done that.
I just was wondering if that was driving your height, a dispersion type thing. So the 15 to 19 feet is really just driven by the necessity for a higher stack height?
Yeah, so as Heather explained, essentially, when we came originally with the 15-foot height that we initially planned on, some of the comments we received were, again, versus, trying to dampen that sound when the generator was running. So as we got into final design to really, dampen that sound to a level that we thought, would be a good level when it ran. I mean, obviously, it's only running in an emergency situation or periodic maintenance checks, those types of things. But it resulted in this large muffler, essentially, that you're stacking on top of the generator, which increased the height to that 19 feet. So that's what's driving it.
So I would go back to Chairman Border's question of can you put this outside of the muffler outside of the building on the side or something like that and have a shorter stack, a different design? Rather than going straight out of the generator.
Yeah, we looked at that, and I believe that it really, the options that were given to us, it's a prefab type building there, but the options on the muffler were to be above. But yeah, so that's kind of where we've investigated it.
So is it the roof that's actually, I mean, it was a 15-foot originally when this was approved in June, right? So that was the top of the roof or the top of the stack?
The top of the roof.
Top of the roof.
Yeah.
What's the roof now? Is it still 15 feet?
No, 19 feet.
So this is not just the stack, it's the roof itself.
Yes, so there's
The
a big
request is to go
muffler.
up.
The entire muffler sits on top of the generator, which causes the roof to
Oh, I see, and
raise
that's
up.
all inside the building?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're basically raising the roof 4 feet to accommodate a muffler on one end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a large up muffler, but yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's on one end of the building, and we're raising the whole roof 4 feet.
Okay.
And you say you couldn't mount it horizontally?
That, as far as the options that were given to us, that was not an option that I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Doors for the record. I saw in here mentioned in the late material that the building was planned to be 36 feet beyond the fence, but the pictures that were then in the late material, and that was the only place I could really find any of this info, It didn't look 36 feet beyond the fence. Did we change that, or is it 36 feet beyond the Kaiser's fence?
The horizontal location has not changed from the original application.
So presumably still 36 feet.
Yeah, I think it's 30 to 36, or I don't know, the dimensions that are shown on the application are the
Somewhere in
same. Yeah, that has not changed.
On the easternmost side, it would be 30 feet, and the westernmost side at 36 feet.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems that limiting the height at 15 feet, you know, with the fences that they have back there doesn't seem nearly as impactful as the 20 feet. So I kind of agree with the idea of trying to limit the impact of what we're raising up, and maybe even in so doing, I wasn't here, I was out of town during this meeting, the June 26th meeting last year, but maybe in so doing, we can even lower other parts of the roof too, where it's feasible. I don't know, if we're going back to the drawing board in terms of that roof design, maybe we can even, you know, lower it in the sense of being or in the spirit of being a good neighbor where else we can too, but I certainly support only having a stack where we need it.
As far as following up on your comment and Chairman Border's comment as well, I think it'd probably be easier to lower the entire section of the roof rather than sections, I guess, of the roof. So as far as an option, I mean, if that were the direction of the Planning Commission, I think we'd want to look at, you know, the entire roof is probably more feasible.
Anybody else for staff? Commissioner Wiggins?
I think that if we're going to redesign the building, I think that I'd like to see a redesign before we vote on it.
Commissioner Wiggins?
Yeah, Commissioner Wiggins, for the record. I saw that the required setbacks were compared to single-family residential. What would a commercial building in this location be a setback?
So in the single-family 21,000, the setbacks,
I guess the reason I'm asking is this is a commercial building, not really a residential.
so I'm getting
Yeah.
there. So the setbacks in single-family 21,000, for the front setback is 20 feet, side setback is 10, street side is 15, and the rear is 20. So this would really be like a rear, I would think a rear setback to a rear setback. They're at 30 feet. If it was a commercial zoning with a commercial business on it, next to residential, it would be minimum 30 feet.
I have just an observation. Looking at the site plan, that you're proposing to raise this building 4.5 feet. 4.5 feet is going to get you, would be the same as having the base of the building at the bottom of the fence. I mean, there's only 4 feet of drop there. So we're really raising this whole building up so that it's going to be right in front of his whole view. I mean, look at that almost that whole section of fence line there, or property line, is taken up by the view of that building. I just, you know, if we're raising this building 4.5 feet and having an incredible impact on this person's enjoyment of their property.
For a muffler.
For a muffler.
For a muffler that wasn't
part-time
approved when the
muffler.
SUP got approved already last year. I mean, I get we're trying to do better and make it quieter, but we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face there, it seems like.
If I could add, so there's an option. I mean, we could do a smaller muffler. It wouldn't have quite the magnitude of the sound attenuation that this muffler would have. That we could get probably down below the 15 feet that was originally approved. It wouldn't be a redesign. I know you mentioned a redesign. It wouldn't be a redesign. It would essentially just be the roof line would lower to within that 15-foot range. So there's not really anything different than what was proposed. It would come down to basically the original intent. And there would be a smaller muffler on top of the generator The sound attenuation would still meet the original permit or the approved permit, but it's always trying to balance sound attenuation with building height, right? The more sound attenuation, the higher the building. That's really the balancing that you're trying to find here. So it would be an option. We could meet the sound attenuation proposed in the original permit with a smaller muffler and get that height down. It just wouldn't have quite the magnitude that we have that's in front of you today. So did want to throw that out.
Well, I would submit to the commission that we consider that a building is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, affecting his view, where the sound is on a generator and would only be very, very infrequently from what it sounds like. So both affect him, both affect the property owners. One affects the property owners all day, every day, and one doesn't.
Okay. Is there anything else from the commission? Outside in the ante room, is there anyone that would like to speak on this subject right now? Please identify yourself. All we can see is our fuzzy images.
I'm just making sure I'm all nice and clean. I'm Joanna Kaiser, and it keeps echoing. Is it supposed to do that? I keep hearing myself.
I think it's the volume of the TV that's out there. You may be
Okay.
stuck with it.
Okay, so I'm not losing my mind. I'm just echoing. Okay. First of all, man, that's hard. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I can barely hear an echo now. The first thing I wanted to comment about, first of all, thank you so much for allowing public comment in these difficult times where it's hard for us to all get together and chat and see each other. The first thing I wanted to comment about was the original notice. And the reason I'm so concerned about that original notice is if we had known that this was going to be built directly behind our home, all of our neighbors would have been there. That the original notice had no people come to the meeting. I'm a teacher, and if I send out a notice and nobody comes, I have a good indication that my notice wasn't very good. And just today in the newspaper, because I'm an old lady and still get the Nevada Appeal, still read it, it's talking about all the development in Prison Hill, which I love running over there besides the rattlesnakes. And it talks about Open Space sent a survey, 197 respondents. Open Space followed that up, 100 people attended. Nobody attended the notice meeting because the special notice that we received had the arrow away from homes. No homeowner thought this was going to be directly behind a home. And I understand that the letter of the law, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a teacher. I understand that you met the letter of the law, but it was misleading to homeowners. As you saw in the documents I submitted, my notification was getting ready for school one morning and seeing an excavator in my back, inches from my fence, calling my husband and saying, something's wrong, they're putting something right behind our property. He assured me, no, they would never do that. Carson City would never do that. But yet that's what they're doing. And I'm a detail gal. I also created a timeline. I won't send it to you because I'd have to come be near you. But on January 30th, when we found out, my husband met with Jeff Freeman from the city that day. We stayed up till midnight that night when we got home from work, sending a letter to the supervisors, the mayor, Mr. Stuckey, I forgot his name, Schultz. And then we met with them the next week. Then we went to the Board of Supervisors meeting. And between Darren and my husband, there's been 23 emails back and forth. What's going on? What's happening? And they assured us that they were doing everything they could to address our concerns. But in all this time, that was January 30th. In all this time, everything has gone on business as usual in our backyard. Coming home and seeing whatever they're called, I don't know if it's an excavator, but hitting our trees, our pear trees that my husband built. I mean, put in 8 pear trees. I mean, everything in that property in our landscaping has been done by us. So it's heartbreaking to see. And coming home and our house shaking with vibrations because of all the development. I'll try not to cry. It honestly took me almost 2 months to even go back behind the property because of how upsetting it was. So, okay, I'm gonna try to calm down. So anyhow, the next thing I want to talk about is you already have the images. I know it was late because we thought we were going to be able to come and hand you the packets, which we can't now. But the images you got, I noticed, are in black and white. Mine are in color. But the first page, the concerns to be presented at the Planning Commission, it shows absolutely open vistas. And I understand that letter of the law, we don't protect views. But like one of the commissioners said, this isn't being neighborly, and it's not the Carson City way. Every single Carson City resident, and I don't go around trying to stir up trouble. I'm not that kind of person. But as we talk to people, every Carson City resident is shocked that the city would do this, flabbergasted that this is directly behind our home. And the only person, my one friend who wasn't surprised is a South Reno resident. And she's like, well, what's the big deal with view? In South Reno, they build things right next to us. And I'm like, not in Carson City. Our property, and I understand about the view, it's not protected, but in the information I sent to you, the last image before I said, good evening, Planning Commission members, shows how high that structure is going to be, 19 feet, completely engulfing the whole backyard, not just for the view, but just walking back there and seeing this huge structure when everything about the backside of our house is all about those open vistas. And like I said, it's been so heartbreaking that I couldn't even go back there until 2 weeks ago. So I already talked about how the public notice, it was misleading. I understand that it follows the letter of the law, but no, not one of our community members was at that meeting from our neighborhood. The second thing, and I really feel this permit should be revoked because it's so misleading, the picture that the lady showed at first with the arrow showing directly behind our house, that is not the notification that we ever got. So when they showed the notification with an arrow directly behind our house, the June 26th notification, the arrow was in the flat land behind the homes, not directly next to ours or any of the others. This also goes against your own codes and ordinances with being compatible and preserving the character of the neighborhood. What else was I going to say? In the city's own documents, we already talked about the trees. It showed that these big evergreen trees were going to be directly behind the property. There are no evergreen trees behind our property. It is nothing but open space. And the other thing that is so upsetting to me is it's very prejudicial to one homeowner, us. You stuck it directly behind our home, the whole length of our fence line. And what else was I going to say? Because you've already received all of this, right? You've already received all that? Okay. I've been having to do lots of Zoom meetings as an educator, so there's been lots of thumbs up as we try to talk to each other on these Zoom meetings. And the last thing, you state that in question 7 in your own permit, it will not result in material damage or prejudice. We talked about that. But also, not just the heartbreak that this is our home and we've been there 22 years, but that you're negatively affecting our property values. And it was very clear in your permit, and I'm trying to look back here to see where I wrote about that. I wrote about that, let me see. Will not be detrimental to the use, peaceful enjoyment, economic value, or development of the surrounding properties. And like I said, the picture definitely shows that this would be something that would be a catastrophe if we were just looking at the value of our home. And of course, I'm looking at it as someone who loves my home and is planning on living there till I die in Carson City. I love it there. But just the impact that you're having financially on our property is unacceptable. Also, like I've said, my husband's gone back and forth, trying to get information with the city, trying to get this changed, and no matter what, nothing has been changed. Even though they've been very nice, everyone with the city has been very nice, but nothing really has come of it. And so, I think that was my last thing I was gonna say, because you've already seen all these pictures, and I could show you my timeline, but I don't wanna, get in your, to keep everybody safe. So anyway, my wish is that you would think of this as, what if this was your home? What if the city had decided to build a structure the size of a house directly behind your property? And it's not even a house, it's some pump station with a huge muffler on top. And I just, like I said, I've lived in Carson City my whole life, moved here when I was a kindergartner, teach here, my daughters, our daughters, my husband, I love it here. And this is not how Carson City treats its citizens. It's not how Carson City treats private homeowners, because we're a city that comes together during all times, difficult, good times, bad times, and we try to do what's best for each other. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I won't wipe everything from my husband because I guess he doesn't need it.
My name's Reed Kaiser, and I live on Derby Court. Again, that was my wife, so I don't need to go over all that. I sent in some pictures, if they could be shown.
They're up now.
Okay, I can't tell which picture.
So I have the one with the light pole up.
The light pole, okay, the one with the light pole. Okay. What you're looking at right there is the top of that light pole. I requested that, Darren, again, as Joanna said, the city's been very nice, very pleasant to talk to. They met us whenever we wanted to. So I asked them to put some marker out there that would show us how high this building is going to be. Well, the top of that light pole is going to be the top of the building. So you can see from that picture how high that's going to be. That's going to be completely blocking our view. And again, we know you can't protect views, but you get the point. How about the next picture? Okay, this is a picture of it today. And what that is, that's the foundation of the existing structure, of the structure that's going to go in. And it's, as Joanna said, it's a 100% behind our property. It's going to block pretty much all of our northwest or northeast view. We'll never see the Virginia range again. So again, that's what where the location of the structure will be. And how about the last picture? Okay, this is a picture from me standing on a chair and looking over the fence, and that's the top of our fence. And yeah, you can see how close it is. And again, now I'll be quick here. I'm an engineer, and I work for an engineering firm in Reno. And I've been doing engineering type work for 31 years, and I've been involved in many public meetings. And the worst thing you can do when you have a public meeting is somewhere down the road have people surprised at what you're presenting. Well, this is what happened at this location. The notice that was sent out, again, it referenced Norfolk Drive. We live on Derby Court. If even in the special use permit, there was a map where the house was going to be. If they would have stuck that map in the notice, we would have all been here. We would have had this discussion in June, and we would probably be moving forward with something else. Okay, so I think this notice was wrong, and also that said on in the notice that this facility was going to be placed north of Long Ranch Estates. Well, we're in Long Ranch Estates. It's not north. Maybe it's on the northern tier, but you get it. Okay. Okay, and also regarding that notice, the notice that we received for this meeting tonight it had no mention of Norfolk Drive in it. They completely changed the description where this facility was going to be. If you go back to the June notice, it mentions Norfolk Drive, and that reference is not made in the meeting for tonight. Okay. We're not against the water line going in. In fact, for the firm I work for in Reno, we have 5 engineers that all they do all year long is sit at their computer and work at FEMA floodplain maps. They do FEMA floodplain maps all over the U.S. They actually have contracts even with Washoe County and Douglas County laying out floodplain maps. They're very critical. Every county, city has floodplain maps. Well, this location just to the west of us, the floodplain, the FEMA floodplain at this is narrower than it is where the walkway dips down to the floodplain. It would have been very easy to modify the floodplain map at this location and move that structure away from homes. It's not that hard to do, and move the structure so that it's not right behind our house. Our neighbors, they had an addition added onto their house, and even though their house is pretty much northwest of our house, they had to get our permission. They had to show us a copy of the plans. They had to get our signature before the city would allow them to get a building permit. And again, this was just an addition of about probably a 400 square foot room onto their house. Yet there was nobody ever approached us about getting us, letting us know what was going in behind our house. I would think that a signature might have went a long ways here. Okay. And that's all I have now. And I am, you guys can come talk to us if you need be, but again, we think the location of this structure directly behind our house is unacceptable. We think that the notice was misleading. And like my wife said, we didn't know about it till the end of January. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is John Vitale. I live on Derby Court, kind of kitty corner from these folks over here
Sir,
who just spoke.
sir, sir.
It's on.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Would you start with your name
Can
again,
you hear me
please?
okay?
Yes, would you start again with your name?
Yes, I can. My name is John Vitale. I live at 678 Derby Court. And I object to the building being there, period. The notice that was sent out some time ago mentioned Norfolk Drive. My understanding was, let me give you a little background. First of all, I've been licensed in real estate in Nevada since 1978, down in Las Vegas when I was just before I retired from the military, where I was the director of material and maintenance for the Nevada test site portion that we used for Red Flag. As a real estate agent, I sold a lot of property in Carson City. And I never once, when I sold a piece of property in Carson City at our development, informed people anything other than what I was told when I bought the property at 678 Derby Court back in 1998. And what I was told at that point in time, and all the brochures that were, I assume, approved by Carson City, indicated that that space was forever open space. Nothing would ever be built there. And I took the people at their word, and I'm extremely upset, and my family's upset that anything is going to be taking away from the beauty of that open space. People come from all over Carson City to walk and enjoy the pathways that are through the Long Ranch Estates, Kings Canyon Highlands. And we expected it to be that way in perpetuity. Nothing of the notification that I received indicated that anything like that was going to be happening. Now, when I got a notice that said there's going to be a development over, or a pump station, or pump added, adjacent to Norfolk Court, what I assumed, and I assume everybody else assumed, is that that development would be where I believe it was a well put in some time ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, right behind the Wagner's home, and their home is right where Thames hits Norfolk, or divides Norfolk from Oxford Court. And that location, there's just, all that was done underground. And so we saw Norfolk Court, or Norfolk as a location for this thing. I think everybody assumed that it was just going to be a pump added down below ground. And I guess nobody really worried about it. But now when we see what's going to be done, it's going to completely change the nature of the neighborhood. And I think that's would be a darn shame. And I think Carson City would be really remiss in allowing that to go forward. And I certainly will complain to the Board of Supervisors if that's necessary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else out there that wishes to speak on this item? If you have a green light, please state your name and go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, so my name is Mike Messman. I live at 679 Derby Court, which is the next door neighbor to Joanna and Reed Kaiser. It's the residence immediately to their south. So I just would like to reiterate many of the points that my neighbors have already spoken about in reference to the June notice. When I did receive that notice, it was very vague. It did not, like Heather spoke about in her presentation, it wasn't required to have details, and it lacked pretty much any detail for me to come to a good understanding of what was going to be built there. Like my neighbor just spoke about, there was Norfolk Drive referenced in that notice, and like him, I believe that what possibly was going to be built there, because again, lack of details, that the underground pumps that were at specifically adjacent to the east of the property line of 780 Norfolk, I believed it was going to be something like that or similar to like that structure there, which that structure there is less than 5 feet in height. So in my belief, if there was going to be something built in the area there that we're talking about now, at less than 5 feet, it would not have the impact that this structure here that we're talking about today is going to have. When I did receive notice that of the details of this structure, that's the first time, and just like my neighbors, as the construction was going on and I could see more and more of what was being developed there, I started to question myself, like, if it's going to be underground, what is the necessity of this large concrete pad and all of these things? So essentially, when I did receive the specifics as far as what we're here speaking about, that's what compelled me to show up here to express my objection to this building. What I will say is that this particular neighborhood, the open space behind this neighborhood is throughout the entire subdivision. So we're not just talking about just us and just this one particular street. This entire subdivision is designed that way. That's what makes this particular subdivision desirable to many people. And like my neighbor has previously stated, there's many people throughout Carson City that come into our neighborhood just to enjoy that open space. So for them to build this extremely large building at the size and specifications that they're doing it is just completely wrong, and I'd just like to state that I'm completely object to it.
Thank you very much. Go ahead,
I'm John Granata, and I live at 617 Derby Court. We were handed out that flyer about the building of this pump house. It was very vague. They did not talk of there was only a site plan. There was no elevation plan. And it looked like it was going to be something smaller, but when we saw the pad, it was unbelievable that they were going to put that there. And also no mention of a generator or no sound decibels were mentioned at what level this thing would create. So I think everybody else has covered everything about how I feel, but I, was kind of surprised to see that take place like that. So very disappointed. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else out there? Last chance. Okay. Let's bring it back to us then. Heather, you have?
If you have specific questions, I feel like I touched on all of the issues that they've raised, but if you have specific questions.
Commissioner Eswine, did you?
Well, I'm just wondering that, given Mr. Stuckey's comments earlier about looking at a revised plan, if he might want to just consider taking back his application at this point and coming back at a later date.
Well, the issue as I see it is that there is an approved special use permit for a 15-foot building. So.
I mean, he could go ahead and do that building.
Correct.
But he also indicated that, maybe we could come up with a different plan. If he wants to come up with a different plan, then he can bring it back here and.
Dan Stuckey, City Engineer for the record. So no, there's not a different plan. It would just be going back to the 15-foot, figuring out a way to get a smaller muffler in there, essentially. So it's not a, as I mentioned before, it's not a redesign. It's essentially looking at a smaller muffler and lowering that entire roof to get back to that original 15-foot that we had in the original application.
But if you're going to do that, you could withdraw your application for this building, and then we wouldn't have to take a vote on it.
I mean, yeah, I guess I just didn't, there was a little unclear. You talked about a redesign and bringing it back to the Planning Commission. So I was a little confused by that. I mean.
I think what Commissioner Eswine is saying is there's not a lot of support up here, it doesn't seem like, for a 19-foot building, a 19-foot roof.
That's fair. If that's the case, then yeah, we would probably just go back to the original one.
Couldn't we also revoke the special use permit currently in place? We couldn't?
No, it's
You
not on
can't?
it's not on the agenda. No.
Well, I understand that, but at some
future date,
point,
yes.
yes.
I do have a question, though. The picture that Mr. Kaiser took of the light posts, he mentioned that those are where the roof would be. Is that where the 19-foot roof would be or the 15-foot roof?
My understanding is the 19-foot is the top light pole.
Is the top. So
Yeah.
4 feet underneath that. Well, he may at some point get to see part of that Virginia range again, but that is nonetheless disappointing. And yeah, I mean, most of my questions involve revisiting the original SUP because I wasn't here in June. So in regards to this, I must agree with the rest of the commission. Doesn't seem like
Well, in
much
the
support
original SUP, I think we talked about putting it farther up the hill. I think I talked about, can't we put it in another location? And I think the answer that I was given is because of the location of the water lines and the floodplain, that this was where it had to go.
That is correct.
Why can it be? I understand gravity is huge when you're dealing with water sometimes, but pumps tend to negate that. Could this entire facility not have been built with the grade being 8 feet below the ground level or 10 feet? Or, I mean, could we not have lowered this and mitigated the impacts to the neighborhood? You're the water expert,
Yeah, no, it had to be an above ground facility. That's what we wanted from an operational standpoint. So, and that's why we proposed it this way in the original application.
I will make a motion. I move to deny the amendment to SUP-19-082 as presented based on the inability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report, specifically the inability to make the finding that this will not impact the value of surrounding properties.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
So just for clarification, Commissioner Perry, so what that basically means is that the special use permit that was granted in July will continue, and that special use permit had a limitation of a 15-foot height on the building. Is that correct,
That's correct.
Mr. Engineer?
That's how I understand it.
And
yes.
you believe that you can do that and execute it and have this pumping station work according to what is needed in the
Yes.
system?
I believe we can explore options to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion the motion carries, the special use permit fails.
I would just like to
Unanimous?
follow up
Yeah,
on that, that if when you're looking at this again, if you can reduce the height of any section of that building, that would be fabulous.
We will look as getting it as low as we can with balancing. Obviously, we need a muffler and the sound attenuation there, but we will do that.
and Heather, the other thing that really doesn't apply to this as much, but we've been working on trying to be consistent with building heights and roof heights. And it seems to me that we're measuring everything from the midpoint of the roof. And this special use permit was always talking about the peak. And it would be helpful for us if we could be more consistent.
Yes, I understand that, and that's the height that was provided to us. We did not have a scaled drawing to work with.
Okay.
Hey, Dan, are there plans out for the 15-foot drawing or for the 15-foot building, or are you going to get back with engineers and architects and have those drawn up?
We would get back with the engineer to do it, but essentially all it would be is the lowering of the roof. There would be no other architectural changes to the building than what you see in the application.
Just to double up, for doubling up's sake, I agree with Mr. Eswine. If we could relay the message that anywhere we can lower it, I understand that it's not necessarily the easiest, but we are the city, and I think we have should do our due diligence in that regard. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Onward, upward. Item E3 and E4, we're going to do these together, I believe. E3 is discuss and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit for a duplex on a corner lot on property zone single-family 6,000 located at 501 Thompson Street, APN 003-101-01, and discussion and possible action regarding a request for a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet on the property zone, single-family 6,000, located at 501 Thompson Street, APN 003-101-01. Hope Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll introduce Michael Locke, who's the applicant. He's across the way from me. The request, as the chairman read, is a request for a duplex on a corner lot and a variance to reduce the front setback from 20 feet to 10 feet. The subject property, and I have on the screen the location of the property, is an 8,189 square foot property located at the corner of Thompson and Fifth. It's actually at the edge of the historic district. So across the street on Fifth is the historic district. And if you were able to visit the site, you saw that we do have historic resources right across the street. The site slopes down in the rear and the fault line runs through the rear of the lot. Surrounding land uses are to the east, a duplex, to the west, a single-family home, to the north, an office that has a residential unit in it, and to the south, a single-family home. I'm not going to go real in-depth on this. However, for the special use permit, as we always talk about, we have the 7 required findings of fact. Two highlights I want to point out for the special use permit are, one, we're going to have some transportation improvements associated with this. So we often look at whether or not there will be detrimental impacts to the transportation system for pedestrians or vehicular traffic. This use will actually improve the traffic situation based on staff's recommendations, which would be to require the construction improvements on Thompson to include widening the pavement section, installing curb, gutter, and sidewalk, as well as a sidewalk on Fifth. So if you visited Thompson, you saw that the street was skinnier in front of this lot. So it will become the same width as everything else. I also want to talk about the architecture. I think it's fair to say that the architecture and the elevations that were presented to the Planning Commission were a bit of a placeholder. I have discussed the architecture with the applicant, particularly given that's right across the street from historic resources. And the applicant does recognize that we are seeking improved architecture that would be compatible and complementary to the district. In terms of the variance, I rarely bring variances to this commission. I rarely support variances. So when we look at variance, we are looking at three findings of fact. One, does it meet the definition, specific standards of the code? Two, will it preserve and allow for the enjoyment of substantial property rights? And thirdly, is it going to create or compromise, if you will, the health and safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the subject property, and will it be materially injurious to the property improvements in the neighborhood? I'm going to take a little bit longer on the variance piece because it's so rare that I support one, and I'm supporting this variance. I actually forgot about my PowerPoint. Sorry about that. Okay, so I put up the slide that shows you where that fault line is. Typically, the applicant would be required to have a 10-foot setback. You can see the fault line is actually on the property line, and based on the investigation letter that Loomis and Associates prepared, they're recommending that the house pad be at least 25 feet from that mapped fault. So whereas normally it'd be 10 feet from the property line, they're going to need to go 25 feet from the fault line. So they're seeking to bump this house forward, or the duplex forward. I failed to say that I believe the 7 required findings for the special use permit can be met. So given that I believe those can be met subject to the conditions of approval, the first finding for the variance that meets the definition, specific standards of the code can be met. In terms of the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights, again, we look first at the duplex. Can we make those special use permit findings? And then we look at the land. This is a constrained lot, and it's not just the fault, but you also have a steep slope in the rear with dense vegetation. So the dense vegetation kind of hides the slope a little bit. Also, so in the rear, and I've already talked about this, we're going from 10 feet from property line to 25 feet plus for a rear setback based on the presence of the fault. So I can make that finding. I believe that the land is dictating that we bump this building forward because he has less of a rear setback. In terms of the third finding, my primary point of concern, I'm going to go back to the map, was the property to the south. And if you had a chance to visit that site, you'll see that's what's called a through lot, which means it has frontage on 2 streets. The house is addressed off Minnesota. If you drove on Minnesota, you'll see that's the front door of the house is over there, although the house is kind of in the middle of the lot. And when you look at that property to the south from Thompson, you see it slopes steeply down. So I suspect if somebody were to try to build so as to front building onto Thompson, they would be before this commission for some type of variance given the slope that is there. That property also is fairly wide property, kind of isolating this corner lot. And had the corner lot chosen to front the building on Fifth with Thompson being a side property line, we'd be looking at a 10-foot setback because the street side setback would be 10 feet. So for all those reasons, I am able to make the 3 findings required for the variance subject to conditions of approval. I'm happy to go more in depth on anything and answer any questions. Thank you.
Hope, if I'm standing on Fifth Street at the property line looking to down Thompson, the property just to the south has a fence. And it looks to be about 10 feet from the road. And on the property that we're talking about, they have a power pole that looks like it's 20 feet. So are we talking about the front of this building being even to the fence on the property to the south, the chain link fence? Is that kind of what we're looking at?
I'm going to have
I'm just trying to get a feel for where the 10 feet
And
is.
actually, the best point of reference to me, because the city does own that right-of-way, is to consider the properties even farther south from that through lot, because that's where we've utilized the entire right-of-way. But I'll ask the applicant to speak to the location of those improvements vis-à-vis the property line. A measurement will be taken from property line.
Any other questions for staff? Go ahead.
I have two. The architecture, understanding that we want it a little upgraded and whatnot, would that be something that we would enforce when they go to get building permits?
Yes, in the conditions of approval, I've included a condition that, number 5, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall demonstrate that the architectural design is consistent with the architectural guidelines identified in Division 1 of the development standards. So I have spoken with the applicant, and I think you've probably been in a meeting for, an hour, so the applicant and I have been talking for about an hour. And we also had a neighbor come out and talk to us about it, the applicant, and he'll speak for himself. But he recognizes that this architecture was a bit of a placeholder. It's not fully developed, and he has every intention of improving the architecture of this building, particularly along the northern property line.
Okay, and then secondly, if I'm reading this right, from the actual house, we got the 10-foot setback, then we got 8 more feet and then 5 more feet of curb. So we're looking at actually 23 feet from the street to any structure. Is that correct? That's right, just to verify.
Yes, I'm looking at figure 3. There's quite a few figures, but I'm
I got-
looking at from the edge of sidewalk back to the building is about 18 feet.
And then, but they're putting, and then the sidewalk is gonna be a 5-foot sidewalk, so it should be, I'm just trying to gauge, realistically off the actual street where traffic and that intersection is, we're gonna be 23 feet, it looks like, to the structure, or to the garage door, whatever we're looking at.
Okay, right, and I just put up a site plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
So
at.
on that site plan, what you can see there is you can see where he's called out the 18 feet from the sidewalk. And you can see that dash line. Let me get this. Here's the dash line right here. That dash line is property line. So he'll be 10 feet back from property line, which is where we would measure setbacks. But he would be 18 feet back from sidewalk.
Which is,
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I have one. I
Commissioner
know I'm
Perry.
down here and you can't see me. Commissioner Perry, you know, I walked this out on Sunday, I think it was, and it looks like a good use of this challenged piece of land, you know? And I'm a geologist, so I understand the fault issue there a bit. And one of my questions was gonna be that in a minute, but what I do like about this is that it does extend Thompson Avenue, which is a little tight at that corner right there, and provides for sidewalks, which I don't think I've ever been there. I would just comment to the applicant, and you probably, obviously it's your land, you know this better than I do, but there's a bunch of railroad ties sticking out of the middle of it, and it looks like there was a structure on this before somewhere in past history, so I would be, you know, cognizant of that as you dig into it. I'm not looking for an answer, I'm just, you know, it's like something was on this property before, and yeah, something was there. Don't be surprised when you start digging of what you find. But on the Lumos and Associate Geotechnical Report, I had one question here, because I've never actually seen this. This is a first, and I like it, but down there it says, this is a fault that has moved within the last 130,000 years, but not during the last 10,000 years. And indeed, I've actually been to this area with the state geologist, and that whole thing is a scarp all along there. The entire hill was the offset of an earthquake at some point in history long before us. The ditch area is over 25 feet from the proposed house pad location. And then it says, according to the local building code amendments, no critical facility shall be placed directly over the trace of a late quaternary active fault. So this isn't city code, this isn't planning code. This is local building code that says that. I just was not aware that there was that extent to local building code.
I can't say I'm aware of it either. Typically, we defer to a geotechnical analysis, but it sounds like the geotechnical analysis is consistent with what they're describing as building code. I'm not familiar with it being in building code.
Can I ask the applicant?
Yes.
I unfortunately am not a geologist, so.
Push your button, make it green.
It's really the questions about the building. This is something that's, where do I find that building code?
Well, first, I'm not sure that whether or not it's part of the building code has any bearing, in my opinion anyway, on whether or not we can make the findings for the special use permit or for the variance, because we do have the geotechnical engineer's recommendation. Having said that, I'm happy to follow up with our building official and communicate with the commission on what that answer is.
Thank you. Hope I absolutely understand what you said there. It's just that it's always a learning experience to understand those things. And this is a risk that this city has, as we found out just a week ago. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Applicant, have you read the conditions that they put out, and are they acceptable to you?
I have read the conditions and I do accept all of them.
Okay. I have a question for you on your elevation, on this north elevation. It looks like there's a basement with a window.
Yes, there will be.
And on the regular floor elevation, it looks like there's a stairwell down to that basement with a window. Is that an unfinished room? Is it storage? What's it going to be?
The downstairs will be the utilities. There will be the hot water heater and the furnace will be down there. And there will be some unfinished space. There is a window there for, it'll be more of a storage area than anything with the utility closets.
Okay, thank you. That answers. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Nope. All right. Is anyone out in the ante room that would like to speak on this issue? Did I hear a yes? Yes. Okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lara McKnight. I'm the owner of the home across the street from this proposed property at 500 Thompson Street. So I do have some of my neighbors that would like to be here tonight, and they just are not because of public health concerns. So our concern is, I don't really feel that a duplex, or certainly a duplex of this design, is in keeping with the architectural and historical spirit of this neighborhood. The two properties to the north of this space, even though one of them is a business, it is a historic Victorian as well. There is a duplex to the east of the property, but there's nothing from Thompson Street beyond that is a duplex. And so I don't feel that that really is conducive to a historical neighborhood and where we would like to see that going. Our property values have really improved as downtown Carson City has really revitalized. And so we have concerns about a duplex being built even further into those historic neighborhoods. My second concern was the variance on the 10-foot setback instead of a 20-foot setback. Currently, we have a traffic problem on Thompson Street, which is certainly not the property owner's fault, but the reality of living on that corner is that Thompson is the first punch through to those south side neighborhoods as you're coming from downtown Carson. So unfortunately, right now, traffic comes around that corner probably 20 miles an hour over the speed limit that they should be coming around that corner. We've got a lot of high-speed people coming around those corners. And reducing the setback from the street, my my neighbor at 504 Thompson Street, Jason Brooks, has small children, and he's got concerns about already too fast traffic coming around that corner and now reduced visibility with a reduced setback right there. So I think I do speak for some of my neighbors in that, yeah, we just don't think a duplex is really consistent with that neighborhood. And also just the 10-foot setback, I think, could be a safety issue. So that's all I have to contribute. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else out there? Guessing not. We bring it back? Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the comments. I agree. I'm familiar, I think, with the speaker's house, the brick one. It's a neat house. I saw that house. And I think there is an opportunity to improve on the architectural design, which is why staff has included those conditions of approval. Again, as I explained to the commission, and as is in the conditions of approval, this road's going to be improved at the corner where it shrinks right now, which our engineering staff didn't indicate any concerns about traffic at that intersection. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay. Comments?
Commissioner Doors, for the record. Well, a couple things. I'm familiar with that neighborhood as well. I grew up off Elm Street, and I was up there today visiting my parents from the outside. I yelled at them from their yard, and they opened the window. It was kind of funny, but I've been. Thompson is our main in and out. I was talking to Hope about this, in and out of that neighborhood for years. Years. I've been at that intersection thousands of times, which kind of brings up an interesting point. There's a pretty clear, definitive line, if you know Carson City, that squares off. It comes down Fifth there, and then it cuts across the lots on Thompson Street, right down the middle of the block between Thompson and Minnesota. And it's not to say anything about people on either side of the line, but below there, down low, you've got multifamily stuff. All sorts, from apartments to condos to planned unit developments. And up above it, you have bigger lots and just single-family homes. Inherently, I know about that little square, that block, but really have never tangibly thought about it until today, really, there is a definitive line there. So I do have a little bit of concerns about bringing the multifamily up, not in any sort of safety or the crowd of people or anything, but in design of the city, that does weigh a little bit on me. Beyond that, if you talk about the variance, one of the things we have to discuss is utilizing the property the same way that all the neighboring properties are able to. I did a little research, barring that one directly south, which is a through lot. The next 6 lots have an average square foot size of 1,347 square feet, basically 1,350 square feet. We're talking here about building a 2,500 square foot building. So we're already outside the realm of enjoying the property in the same way that the neighboring properties are able to. Yes, you have a duplex below it. That is absolutely true. But we've established, not only through we didn't establish, but I said that, but then also you've got a fault line there that literally separates the down low and the up top. And it's, I don't know, I'm not sure that we can make the case that you're trying to enjoy the property the same way your neighbors are. It seems like we're trying to do much more than your neighbors have there. I don't have a problem with the duplex there, but the setback and knowing that the traffic on that corner, as I do, it is a concern. My only concern is with traffic there. You're 23 feet off. That's realistically, your building's a far way off, but when you bring a lot of traffic in there, I foresee it being an issue. And all of those things have been weighing heavily on me, so I wanted to kind of put that out there for the commission to discuss.
Commissioner Swan?
I just would like to say that I live in this neighborhood, so I'm very familiar with this Thompson corner. And I think that improving it and widening it is going to be a huge improvement for both the people who currently live there and the people who are going to be coming up Fifth Street and turning onto Thompson. They will have a much wider throughway to go through. And I think that having the improved street frontage there is going to be better than what's currently there. As far as the duplex, I have no problem at all with having a duplex on this corner. I think that that the house below it on Fifth Street and Minnesota is a duplex. There's a house on the corner. I think that the two houses within the historic district could be considered multifamily houses. They've got apartments in them. I don't think that this is a big change in the neighborhood. And as far as the variance is concerned, I have this is one variance that I have no problem with. This piece of land requires that we grant the variance to allow the house to be closer to Thompson Street than it is to the fault. And that's what I have to say.
Is anyone else? Mr. Wiggins.
Commissioner Wiggins, for the record, is Hope a question for you on condition 5? The architectural guidelines identified in Division 1, does Division 1 talk about historic district and what that encompasses? Or should we add something that says and be similar to historic district guidelines?
Division 1 is not referencing the historic district. Division 1 identifies architecture outside the district. There's a different, I think it's Division 7 that talks about the historic district. So and I quoted parts of Division 1 in the staff report. And so what it says is that the architectural style, massing, and proportion of a building should be compatible with and complement its surroundings and environmental characteristics of the community. And it also says variation of building details, form, line, colors, and materials shall be employed to create visual interest. Variations in wall planes, roof lines, and direction are encouraged to prevent monotonous appearance in buildings. Large expanses of walls devoid of any articulation or embellishment shall be avoided, and so on and so forth. So I'm not suggesting that this be designed as if it was in the historic district, because it's not in the historic district. I'm suggesting that we utilize the provisions of Division 1, particularly Section 1.1.1 and 1.1.3, which I just referenced, to improve on the architecture.
Anyone else? Is there a motion? Or Mr. Perry?
I'll just comment, and then I'd be happy to make a motion. This just appears to be good. I don't live in this neighborhood and don't have the history that you guys do, but it looks to be good infill development because, and excuse me, the lot's an eyesore now with a shed on it, and it's fenced to keep kids out, and this will be a vast improvement on that and the sidewalk and the street. It's consistent with the master plan. It's high-density residential. And as is noted here, that is a variance on SF family 6,000 square foot for two-family duplex units on a corner lot. So with that, if you'd like a motion, I'll make one.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve LU 2020-0003 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Mr. Perry, you're on a roll. You want to do the last one? For the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be happy to do the final motion here. I move to approve variance 2020-0001 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Second. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Do you have to shift now, Hope?
Can I say thank you? Joanna Kaiser, for the record, just wanted to say thank you for your consideration, and we so appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Staff reports.
There are no staff reports.
How about future agenda items? Is there a future agenda?
Yeah, we actually did get, a handful of items in for your next meeting, so I've got to say, it's just been a crazy 2 weeks. I just can't think what they are. But we can certainly send you an email with a list of the applications we've taken in.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioners? Anything you want to say? Yes.
I would like to, just, if we have applications that are not so crucial that they don't, and we're still in this lockdown, if they're not so crucial that they come in right now, I would appreciate it if you would ask the applicants for a continuance prior to us having to come into a meeting.
Absolutely.
I mean, even to the point where when we're all clear, we could have a marathon meeting if we had to. Anything else? Motion to adjourn? Second? Second. Thank you, everybody. Go and wash your hands.
Who's going to wipe down the office?